Hey everybody, welcome to episode 14 of the Palmcast. We really appreciate everybody spending some time and listening to us. So thanks for jumping on. We have an awesome special guest today. So I'm excited because I made this comment on Facebook that we have two of the most important people in all of Alabama on our podcast in less than a week. I don't know how that worked out, Teddy, but I'm super excited about the next two episodes.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait. So today, if everybody hasn't noticed, this handsome, fine young gentleman in front of you is Hayes Jackson from Anniston, Alabama.
All
Hey,
right. Good to be here.
Hayes, tell us about yourself. I mean, I know a lot of us already know a lot about you. I've been interacting with you for at least a couple of years. So tell everybody who you are, and we'll get into all the stuff behind you.
I guess officially, I am the urban regional extension agent with the Alabama Cooperative Extension. I'm the urban horticulturist. I work through Alabama A&M University. So I guess that's my official job. But as part of my job, also as a grassroots program, we decided in our community we needed a botanical garden. So from the community, we started looking at places, and eventually we came up with a community center here in Anniston that was located next to. We have two wonderful museums here. And the community center was moving to a new location, so we stepped in, and we now have a bona fide botanical garden. And I serve as liaison or directors, I guess, but we like to use the term liaison because I am working as an extension agent. But I'm there 2.25 days a week. So I oversee the educational programs there and the development of the garden. And that was, I guess we started in 2010. Officially, it was 10-10-10, October 10th, 2010. So we picked that date. So I said, I can always remember that with a fertilizer date. But anyway, we have a nice garden here in a community that's normally not large enough to support a garden.
How 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 did you get to the point of starting a garden? I mean, that's kind of fascinating.
Well, I guess there's a couple of roads that led me that direction. I'm here at home. You can see I grow a lot of palms here. I have 15 acres. It's a botanical garden here. I say I can mow my grass in 12 minutes with a basically with a weed eater, and the rest is beds and paths, and it's all plants. But one of the things that happened was I have a horrible vole problem, and if anybody lives in a wooded area and you're trying to grow palms, they are my biggest garden nemesis. They would get around the roots, eat the roots, palms fall over. I have 6-7 foot camellias fall over. They are just really damaging. And I had a huge jubea, the Chilean wine palm. It was 9 feet high, 12 feet across. And I
Wow.
looked one day and it was tilted. And so I went in, and of course the voles had gotten around the base, and I thought I had it in an area where I had a lot of permatil and things, and but they still got to it. So one of the things I started doing was I said I need to put these palms where, one, there's no voles, and two, where other people can enjoy them. So that was one of my pathways of trying to get things planted. But the other direction was the community wanted a garden, and I'd already worked with the Museum of Natural History and grouping volunteers to help maintain the grounds, and I started planting stuff there probably in 1983, and there's still a banana tree there that I planted in 1983. So I got them to plant some palms back then, and of course, anybody that's been growing palms long enough knows the 80s were horrible. So I started in '79. So we had a lot of cold winters, but those are kind of, it was just kind of several circumstances that led me to one, I wanted to see a botanical garden in our community. And two, I had the plants I wanted to grow, and I thought it'd be a good place to put them.
Wow.
It's really fantastic too. I'm so glad you hosted the Southeastern Palm Society meeting last year, and I drove down and went to that, and That for one, that was like an outstanding showing. You drug a lot of people in there. I think we had a good outing. There was maybe what 30 people there. But I
Yeah,
loved starting up at the top of the hill there. Um, and we just wound our way down, which like it being on a hill is awesome in itself instead of just being flat. But Tom, I'm telling you, there was so many plants like unreal, like sago palms, um, agave plantings, every kind of flowering plant you can think of, tons that I've never even heard of. Huge Mazzari palm, like man, every kind of the feather leaf palms blow my mind that you have there though. I can't believe some of the stuff that you're growing.
no, we do. We push the envelope, and now the beauty is we're about as far north as I've seen Butea survive for long term. The beauty is there. If you saw, where they're huge, trunking, they're reseeding, and I planted those in 1996, and they were knee high. Um, I have I protect a lot of the date palms. I've lived here long enough. I know we can get at least 2 or 3 nights in the upper teens um, most winters, which is just it's a little bit of work, but not that much effort just to cover the Phoenix and some of the things that are kind of very very zone pushing here. Uh, we're zone 8A. I know that I've watched the zone maps change, but the plants don't seem to change when the zone maps change.
Yep.
I guess I always say the USDA is great if you're a new to gardening or just a general gardener, but if you're really pushing the limits, it's really it doesn't tell you what you need to know. And I always say it's basing a climate zone on one night a year, and then that one night you can be zone 8 and be in Alaska, you can be in Virginia, or you can be in Mexico, and so it's a lot more about your one night minimum temperature. So, but I've noticed I started seeing palms around here. There are cabbage palms, Serenoa, Sagos, and Buteas that have been here for decades, and they've survived some of our coldest winters. So I think they're pretty good to go. But you do need you've got to invest a little bit in making sure that when you plant it, uh, it's established, it's healthy, and you got a sizable plant. And sometimes you're going to risk and put a small pindo out, and we're going to get a bad winter, and you may lose it. But that's just part of the game. But the sable palmettos reseed here. I don't know if you can see in the background. I've got a self-sown seedling back there that's I never protect, and they're happy here. It's a good one, and I think it's probably I would say hardier and better palm for us than Trachycarpus, just because of our heat and humidity. And I've seen Trachycarpus get damaged here, and sable palmetto do fine.
Yeah, I've seen trackies here don't like our summers. Once they get to like the heat of the summer, they kind of shut down for a
Same
few
here.
months. Yeah, and then they pick back up again in the fall. They're fantastic almost all year round. But I think your comment's wildly accurate, right? That like all it takes is one night and it can ruin your entire year of growing. And I'm looking at Google Maps over here on my other half of my screen, and we're roughly a little bit south of you. Not by much. I would say maybe a half hour, 45 minutes south. But I'd like to think that our winters are much more violent here in Dallas for whatever reason. I mean, it's just there's not much in between us and Alaska. I think the saying is
Right.
like there's nothing between us and Alaska but like a barbed wire fence or something like that. There really is nothing here.
And to grow palms and push the limits, you got to be a weather geek too. And I that was my second career choice. I wanted to go into meteorology, but and you're right, Dallas. It's amazing. So many of the like even this winter, so many of the cold fronts really came more east and
Yes,
spared y'all. And
you did.
usually, a lot of times, the more east you go, the little sometimes they have a little more time to moderate. But then every now and then, Dallas and Texas gets that blue norther comes down and I can always look at how many days our record days below freezing is 4, and I think it's what is it in Dallas? It's like 6 or 7 days. So those And that one in 2021 was a doozy.
It was like 7 to 9 days. My backyard recorded negative 2.3, I believe. And even down in like Nacogdoches, it got down to like -4 or something. And that's still, I mean, that's about a half hour southeast of my ranch still. So that's like 3.5 hours, 4 hours southeast of here. And even like last January, down in New Orleans and throughout parts of Louisiana, they got absolutely rocked with that like single digit weather. So having James on this week is going to be interesting too, because, we're always trying to find adjacencies to our hobby. And I feel like I've always enjoyed the weather. I have a Tempest weather station here and at my ranch. I like to like lock into the weather and I pay attention to the weather. But there's nothing more important. All of us are like meteorologists on the weekends. Every time something happens, everybody, all the Palm guys on Palm Talk on Facebook, everybody opens up their 18 apps and they're like, but I saw a model over here. I saw that model. And it's just like everybody gets hyper focused. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing what just a hour in a different direction, even a half hour, right? I mean, Tom McClendon's told me, Tom, you talk about my ranch is essentially exactly 3 hours southeast of Dallas. And, I always didn't think originally that the temperature difference was that much. And Tom's like, man, if you go over 3 hours from me south, I'm in Florida. And it's an imaginary line of being in another state where you all of a sudden are thinking it's going to always be that much warmer. Where, as like you said, all these maps and zones and stuff don't really care about where our lines are and all of that, right? It makes no difference.
One thing I noticed too, like in the Carolinas, you can drive 50 miles in the Carolinas and you get a climate change that's like driving 100 miles in Alabama. It is a quicker change too. I guess when you have the ocean, the Atlantic coming up on the east side, but and you have to drive a pretty good distance now. And here, I really don't see a big difference until you get down to around Montgomery, and that's really to me Zone 8B. And the Buteas are much better off there. You can see Buteas planted in the middle of the landscape. And here I always tell people, give them a little bit of protection from the north wind. And if you see the pictures of the big ones in Anniston, a lot of them are usually on the east or south or west wall. And that just gets us through those crazy cold. And we had one of those, like Louisiana got this past year. I was looking at Weather Underground, those temps that morning. It was below zero down around Lafayette, and of course here in Alabama it's Lafayette or Lafayette. But if you get one of those winters, sometimes it can be that temperature. We had it in 2015, and here at my house, I've been below zero twice, and that was 1985, which set our all-time low temperature of -4, -5, -5 at the airport. I had -4 here. The 2015, I was -1, and our predicted low was 13. So, and we had a little bit of snow cover. The high pressure moved over. You had radiational cooling, and I woke up that morning and I thought my thermometer was broken. It said -1.1, and I was like, hey, gosh, what a night to go have the thermometer go out on one of the coldest nights of the year. And then I was like, surely that's not right. And so I got online, Weather Underground, and started seeing -1, -2, 0, 1 all around here. So it was a crazy, crazy cold. But, it didn't hurt a lot of stuff because we were 45 by noon. The temperature by noon was 45 degrees. So the plants didn't have time to realize how cold it was, I guess. But I was expecting I have a incredible camellia collection here, and I was expecting them to be burned, but it didn't hurt them, and didn't hurt some of the Sabals. That the one that impressed me the most was the Urasana green form.
I'm glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that, because I did want to talk about that, because I've been growing a couple of younger ones here, and they seem to be absolute rock stars. Absolute rock stars.
And it beats palmetto because it grows much faster. I mean, it's probably about as hardy or close, but it grows much faster, and it's huge. I've got a big one here in my garden, and I did, and actually I would have covered it, but I forgot about it. And plus, I didn't think it was going to be I thought 13, 14 degrees, maybe 12, and it was -1. Um, and so I didn't cover it. All I did was put some mulch on it. It didn't hurt it, and I have several at the botanical garden, and they've gone through with no damage. Just sometime maybe a little outer foliage damage in the coldest winters, but minimal damage and just tough as nails and fast growing.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here. So that's what separates me up here in the Arctic in Tennessee is that we might not even go, down to 1 degrees. Like this past winter, our low was 5. That's not great. But the problem here is our time under temperature is just so long. We were under freezing for 7 days, and we had that terrible ice storm.
Yeah.
So I guess I just want to tie in and clarify that, like, you saw not significant damage there from, one or your all-time low there. But the thing that you said was that you were up to 45 by noon. That's something that, like, people watching and new people into gardening that they kind of miss that little point is if you're in Ohio, Kentucky, all these places that want to get into cold hardy palms, you've got to watch your time under duration there that you'll be in cold, because that's when you really do see the damage, right?
Yeah, that duration and frequency to me is much more uh, a an indicator of how well you're going to do than intensity. And I always said, and we have the Southeastern Palm Society, which we started, I guess, back in the early '90s, '94. I think we had a group of us meet at Atlanta Botanical Garden. And I've always said rather run naked through a freezer than sit in a refrigerator all day because,
I've heard
you
that
get it
before.
over with and you're done. You don't have time to realize, but you sit in that refrigerator all day, you're going to be hypothermic and you're going to be hating life. But the palms will tell the story. They know, and I think a lot of it too is the size, the bulk of some of those trunks. You see that Phoenix canariensis in Dallas that's survived the cold. But gosh, you get one up to that size, it takes a long time for that trunk, to that cold to penetrate. So having your palms one healthy and established and having a sizable palm makes a world of difference too. But I'm always looking for microclimates as well. But and I'm working on that now. I've got a Phoenix theophrasti I've put in. I've got another one. And I put a smaller one in just to get it to see what the growth would do to get if I could, get a jump in growth with it being in the ground. But I protected it this winter. I put a blanket and some Christmas lights over it, and I've got a bigger one I'm going to put in at a larger size. Just so we'll see. But those Phoenix here are really marginal. The closest Phoenix to me, there's some Phoenix down in Columbus, Georgia, about probably an hour and 45 minutes south, and another hour and 10 minutes south in Titusville, Alabama. There's a Phoenix down there, but it's on a lake. It's on a big lake, so that's a good microclimate as well. But yeah, that duration and frequency is the key on so many of these things, and I think a lot of younger people that haven't had the years of seeing what winters can do don't they think of solely about low temperature, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, I know Teddy and I very, very often get the question of, is this going to grow in my zone 8? And our answer always is, I don't know, because we don't know what your zone 8 is like. I mean, it's people are like, well, they upgraded me to an 8B. And to your comment earlier, well, the plants don't really care. They don't listen to the USDA. They listen to what happens outside in those winters, right? So we always struggle with an answer of, I mean, I guess possibly, but you may have to baby them for a year or two, right? Until you get them up to that size. So yeah, that's very interesting. So on because all of our listeners we've gotten beaten up a couple of times here recently about not talking about Sabals or palms constantly about every episode. Let's get into some palms, Hayes. So in the Sabal world, if you had to pick a Sabal that's your favorite, don't tell all the other ones. What's your favorite Sabal?
Well, I've already mentioned it. Sabal uricana green form. It's massive. It's fast. It's hardy. It's beautiful. That would have to be my favorite. And in fact, you can tell it's my favorite when you go to the botanical gardens. I've got a grove of them. I put in. I grew. I bought. I got two from Gary Holler in North Carolina, and I put one in my garden. One, and I put it in a middle bed where I've never had vole issues. It's almost surrounded by turf, and they tend to stay out of that bed. So I said I'm going to risk one here. So I put it here and I put one at the gardens, and they have just grown like crazy. They're massive. I don't know, Teddy, you saw it when you were here down there at the corner of the Anniston Museum of Natural History. I don't know if you remember how it's starting to get a sizable trunk on it now. It's got a huge crown, but it's just tough as nails. But Sabals, I love all the Sabals. I mean, and I have Sabal Minor native just down from me, about 2 miles down the road. You can see native Sabal Minor, and we're about as far north. It goes one county above us, Cherokee County. I think those are pretty famous, but you can't beat that for hardiness. But my only complaint about that, and I love having a native palm here in my county, but gosh, that thing can be weedy. Every every seed will germinate. So I've gotten where after they bloom, I let the pollinators play in the flowers, and then I remove the stalks before they go to seed to help um, curb that reseeding fact. But I've got a whole bunch of Sabal Minors and Sabal Louisianas in my garden, and I love those too. But um, then, of course, there's Palmetto. I love that one as well. Um, but they're just a good, tough genus. I've grown the blue form of Urasana. I lost it back in 2015. It had about a 4 foot trunk. We had back-to-back winters. That's another thing that's damaging. If you get cold damage on a palm and you get another winter back-to-back,
Yep.
you can count on having a rough time. And I think, again, that kind of goes in the frequency of the cold. But we had back to back. It recovered the first winter, and the second winter we had a bad winter, and it got it. But I've replaced it. I've got another one growing, and it's actually done quite well. Even despite some of the recent, we've had three pretty bad winters back to back here. Not severe, but pretty dang cold.
I feel like I'm responsible for all the bad winters because I moved down here from Illinois back in 2020, and everybody tells me, man, the last decade prior to you moving here, it was like a 9A. Like we didn't get under 25, and everybody was so hunky dory. And then all of a sudden, I show up, and then 5 months later, well, yeah, probably about 5, 6 months later, then we get our 21 hell. So I'm responsible, I guess. I'm the problem.
Well, and of course, this is the house here that I grew up in. I moved here in 1979, 1980. The house was under construction in late 79. So I started planting palms then. And 81, 83, 85, 89, the 80s were horrible. And 85, like I said, was -5. But there are sable palmettos in town that survived that. So, and there's Serenoa that survived that, and there's Trachycarpus. And so, I mean, if they can survive that winter, that was my stick
Yeah.
then. If they could make it that winter and live, they can survive just about any winter. Because the last time we were below zero, I think we were one below in the early 60s, and then our previous record was -3 in February of 1899. So we don't get below zero that often, but we can get some cold. And one thing, Teddy, we don't get ice either. I don't know how uh, it would shut us down. And uh, I live on a hill. I would never be able to get down my driveway. So I praise you for growing the stuff you do in northern Tennessee. That's amazing.
Yeah, I do what I can. I say, me and Tom talk about this a lot, and as jealous he is of like Tom McClendon and Joe and what they can grow, I'm as jealous as of him as he is of them because I can get away with some sables here, but I've got to diversify my climate and or my plantings and put in trunking yuccas and cactus and agaves and other things that are really cold hardy and they look cool, but they're definitely not palms. The palms I can grow are definitely limited.
Well, and I mentioned we've had some discussions before. The one palm that has really surprised me in its hardiness is Brahia bella. And a
Hmm.
lot of times we don't think of Brahias as being one of the cold hardiest palms, but I will tell you, I got that palm back in the early 90s from Yucadu in Texas. And it's been in the ground probably since mid or late 90s. I've never protected it. And it's slow as Christmas. I mean, it's got a 4 foot trunk on it. It's a small palm anyway, but it gets some foliage damage, but it always comes back. And that's one palm that if it were widely available, everybody should have it. But it's just so hard to find.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But that is my surprise palm of cold hardiness, and it has really done well at Longleaf Botanical Garden.
But you
I
think
have,
that's hardier than the other brahias
I
combined?
think I think it's hard, and I'm doing other brahias there. I've got Brahia clara, Brahia armata, Brahia decumbens, Brahia. I lost the label. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is, but I've just put those in, and I'm going to protect those smaller ones, by like the two while they're young, and get them established. I hear decumbens is pretty tough. I've got a couple of hybrid brahias too, but I do have to protect those below 18 degrees, which is not every winter, but a lot of winters, most of them. And all I do is throw a set of Christmas lights, the non-LED lights, and wrap them, throw a blanket over them, and maybe throw a big trash bag or something over them to keep them dry, and plug them in for a couple of nights out of the year. And of course we had a surprise. Don't you love those surprise nights that the forecast goes like 8 degrees colder, or 5 degrees colder? And we had one of those back several years ago, I think 2015, and we went down to 14, 15, and I had everything uncovered. So my Phoenix dactylifera, and it all survived. I was amazed. Everything, it burned it, but they all came back.
Hmm.
But the Brahias probably look pretty decent. I mean, I was amazed. They didn't totally defoliate, uh, but they came on back. But
Armadas are
Brahia
beauties.
is a good one. Yeah, I love that. Any
Are
palm, that blue Serenoa, that Brahia,
unbelievable.
the Clara is a beautiful blue. The Armada, but yeah, that blue color is phenomenal.
It's the same thing in the Urasanas, right? That there's something about that striking blue color that is just unbelievable in the
And
sun.
and it's the palm my go-to. I wish I could, if only I could grow Bismarckia. That's one of my
Oh,
favorite palms. And
I
even my dad, who's not a plant person, saw we were at Lou Gardens years ago, and he's like, "What is that?" And I was like, "That's Bismarckia." He's like, "I like that one." So, uh, but that's the one palm I wish I could grow.
Teddy and I have talked about that. That's actually mine as well. I love busies. They're fast and they're just so big and so intimidating. But I've seen people try to grow them even north of me, and I'm just like, yeah, good luck.
I grew one in a container for a while, but then what do you do with it?
Yeah.
It just gets too big and it gets heavy. And so, I'll just admire them, or from afar, or I can always go online and look a picture and say I wish I could grow it again. But yeah, they're beautiful. That's my one palm I wish I could grow. Maybe the other one would be Doom Palm, from the Hyphene. From I saw those growing in Namibia and South Africa. I'd love to be able to grow that one as well.
Hey, in the Sabals, what's your most marginal Sable? Like, what's your most pushing of Sabals, if you will?
I just put in Sable Pumos, and I actually put one in, and I lost it the first winter. It didn't. In fact, it went at temperatures that I thought it would have done fine, but I put it in again this year, and I put it in on as a 10 gallon, a larger plant, and it looks good. We had 12 degrees this year,
How'd you
Hmm.
so
find the 10-gallon Pumos?
I grew it from seed.
Oh, well, okay, that makes sense. I was gonna say, I'm like,
And it's
I'm pretty sure there's like three people that sell them, and two of them are on the phone right.
Yeah, I got seed years ago, and so I do a lot of my stuff from seed.
Yeah,
I'm getting now you can find the stuff now thanks to you guys. Um, it was always, with the Palm Society, there was the seed lady Inga Hoffman in the early
yeah,
years that I used to
yeah.
order stuff from, and then now you've got Rare Palm Seeds and some other seed places, but I've got Sabal Riverside. It's unprotected on the north side of the building, and it's taken all the cold too. It occasionally will get a little what I call winter halo, or damage to the newest growth, and it pushes out, and then it's fine. We've got now the one I've had a hard time. I've lost Sabal Mexicana a couple of times, and what's
Really?
weird, yeah, and Etonia. I've
That's
lost
right
both
here.
of those. Yeah,
That's a
uh,
Mexicana.
but I'll lose it in the summer. The bud will rot. So
Hmm.
I've lost two to bud rot, and I've lost two Etonias to bud rot. So I've got to get an Etonia back, and of course that Etonia lived for 5 years with no bud. It's just green leaves that never grew again. But the I guess the other Sabals, I would love to be able to grow, uh, try some of the newer Sabals, like some of the ones that you're offering. I don't know how cold hardy those are going to be. I have a feeling they're probably not, the, what's the,
Antilensis.
yes.
And
And
Lohidiana, yeah, yeah. I was actually just thinking that. I was just thinking I need to get you one of each of those just to see what happens. I got a couple that were gifted to me as we have to try them all over the place and kill them and see how they do. But I mean, I'm not incredibly optimistic to be honest with you. But I do think we probably need to try it with me, with you. I'm gonna get one to Joe as well. I think if anybody has a shot, it'd be Joe out of all three of us, I think. In
yeah,
Augusta.
Joe's in that he's on that fall line where that climate really changes.
Yeah.
Montgomery's like that too. It's just you get dropped down in elevation, and you get he's on that bluff. That airport can get pretty cold, but he's in kind of in town and has that cold air drainage. He's in the perfect spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, good area to be. And it's like I lived in Montgomery for a while, and Montgomery's like that. Gets hot as blazes in the summer. It's always one of the hottest places down along the Black Belt and on that fall line. But yeah, that would be a good place to try them. I've done Causearum. I've got Palmetto time Causearum, and it's been great.
Yep.
And then, of course, Tamaulipas is one of my favorites, just because
Yep.
uh, I still call it Tamaulipas. I know because I've been calling it that for what 20 years.
Yeah.
It's Tamaulipana now, I guess, or Tamaulipiana, or I can't even remember what it is.
Tamaulipensis.
Tamaulipensis. There we
Yeah.
go. See, I
Yeah.
told you I could remember.
Yeah.
But I've been calling it that, and they always said F minor, and I was like, no way is this minor. I mean, the seed are
No.
too large. It's totally different. I've got a couple of them here that are they get 9, 10 feet tall, 12, 15 feet wide here. In good soil, they are happy, and of course I posted a picture earlier of that's the one that I think has really hybridized and has really thrown me for a loop as far as what's going on in the Sabal pollination. But my parents built a house in 2000, and unlike I'm in an old growth forest, lots of shade. They had a new lot, no trees, full sun. So a lot of my plants that I didn't have space for, like Araucaria and Angustifolia, the Paraná pine, and some of the palms I took over, and I put in Sabal Louisiana, and I put in Sabal Palmetto. Of course, I put in Trachycarpus and needle palm too, but those were the only two Sabals I put in. And one of the Sabal Louisianas turned out to be like Lisa. It was contorted, stiff, like Lisa, Sabal Palmetto Lisa. Um, and I was really intrigued, so I watched it. And that thing died though. We had a pretty rough winter that back to back 2015, 2014 winters. It kicked the bucket, which I was shocked being Sabal, Louisiana, which is pretty tough, but something was going on. But it had many years to put out seedlings, and some of the seedlings coming up around there look more like Tamaulipas or than anything. It's got the 360. It's got the short inflorescence. It's got bigger seeds. Of course, some of the seeds are big and some are small. I definitely think it's a hybrid, and it was probably that what I call Lisa was probably a Tamaulipas Louisiana hybrid,
Hmm.
and that's what I'm guessing. I'd love to have the DNA to prove it, but but I've got this crazy palm there that is, and if most people would look at it, you'd go, that's Tamaulipas. Came from seed. It's the from the original plant that was there, but there are no Tamaulipas there. So it tells me there's some crossing going on, and I know some people will say, "Oh, Sabals don't hybridize," but you put all, you go in a palm collector's garden because the seed came from here, and I've got Sabal, Louisiana growing next to Sabal Tamaulipas. So, and I collected seed off Louisiana, and so I have some hybrids, but it's a cool palm. It's a big palm. It's not as big as the Tamaulipas here, but it's definitely has a interesting look to it. And I've even grown some Tamaulipas from seed and Teddy, I think you saw that one too, that trunked.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite palms that it just baffled me and stopped me in my tracks. Like the tour was going on, and I think Tom McLennan was hanging back. He was talking to somebody else, and I grabbed him, and I was like, "Look, Hayes just said that that's a Tamaulipas right there," and he's like, "No, wait, you must have that wrong," and he kept going. But we talked about it later. This thing, it's got like a massive triangle trunk, vertical. No, it doesn't look anything like your standard Tamaulipas that you would normally see.
Well, and
Really
what's
cool.
really weird, it only keeps a few leaves on it. The leaves, before they even get horizontal, will die off. So
Huh.
it's very erect, the leaves that come out, and it's always been different. So, but
Well, what was the
I got
story
to
on the seed for that?
Well, I collected seed off Tamaulipas, and I got those seed from another palm grower because my I have a problem a lot of times. I have that caterpillar that eats all my
Oh,
sable seeds, and
yes.
a lot of times too, I the mine's in shade plus the birds, or it's real sheltered. The birds get in there and can get a lot of my seeds. My friend Davy Hill, who was in the Palm Society, he has an incredible palm collection back then. And I would go and I could cut one stalk of his Tamaulipas, and it would do me enough. I'd have plenty of seeds, uh, and that's where the seed came from. And I
Hmm.
planted uh, a couple of Tamaulipas at the same time, and one of them short, like typical Tamaulipas, and then that one is crazy weird. I don't know.
Have you seen the creeping
And
trunk?
I kept it's trunking,
Yeah. Is it
and
creeping though? Because
most people would call it palmetto if you saw it. You wouldn't say it's Tamaulipas.
interesting.
And I was like, well, maybe I mean, off there, did somebody come in and switch tags? I can't rule that out. That's why I want DNA. But with what I've seen going on at my parents' house, with the way they're crossing and hybridizing, it doesn't surprise me that uh, palmetto. In fact, where I got the seeds was under a sabal palmetto, a big, huge palmetto. So they were
Hmm.
growing right there together. So that's I know the the palmetto parent was close by. If that's what it is. Of course, we got this sabal miamiensis thing going on now too, which I
Yeah.
think I'm seeing trunked miamiensis. There seems like two forms, which I think is miamiensis palmetto cross. So go figure. But we need some
Fascinating.
good DNA. Yeah, I'd
Agreed.
love to know
Agreed.
really what's going on.
Can we get a 23andMe or like an ancestry.com possibly for these palms and just have them go just a box for each of them and just see what the heck the results are? Because honestly, it would that's the fascination I have is like there really is no answer unless we have an answer. So in the absence of an answer, everybody has a theory. And we can't really say that I'm wrong or you're right or Teddy's right. It's like we don't really know. And I wish that we had a great way to get an answer because it would solve even like Blackburniana. We've always asked about what the heck's a Birmingham. Like that's another one that I'm in love with Birminghams. I know people, I grow a lot of them. I sell increasingly more of them actually lately, but I don't know why you wouldn't buy one. They're just like Teddy and I spent our last episode almost 2 hours going through pictures, and I shared a bunch of pictures on the screen, and it's like it's just a beautiful trunk. They're incredibly hardy, and people are like, yeah, they're slow. And ours have been pretty quick for us just because of the dirt that they're in and the mud and the clay. Everything can be faster if you water it enough, ultimately, and you feed it enough, right? I mean,
Water, fertilizer, yeah, yeah. And
exactly.
let me ask you this: do you see a lot of variation among the seedlings?
Um, no, not really. No.
I I see a lot of variation in Brazoria. I can see variations when I grow Brazoriensis from seed, and then I see variations in the plants themselves. And you get variation in palmetto as well. But I haven't probably grown enough Birmingham uh, as much, and I'm doing a project. We are the um, germplasm depository for Sabal Brazoriensis at Longleaf.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't
we
know that.
had um, we had 20 geolocated specimens with seed collection, and I germinated the seed, and we are planting those here through Longleaf Botanical Gardens, and I've got them all numbered. So if something ever you get, with climate change or some kind of catastrophe, you get saltwater, intrusion from hurricane, or that we'll have this species, and we'll have I've got 20 different palms geolocated where we got the seed through, and it was all done through with the wildlife refuge. So, but
Awesome.
I see variation in those. I can see variation. Then I have some original collections that are about 22 years old that I got from Jesse Perry in Raleigh, North Carolina, who was also overseeing the collection of these. We did the latest run, but he collected. I think he gave them out at a Palm Society meeting as in little styrofoam cups, and they were numbers 1, 2, and 3. And I've got 2 and 3. I don't know what happened to number 1. It must have died or disappeared or something, but they are planted at Longleaf and are massive now. I've got 4 or 5 foot trunks on them, and they're both a little different. I can see one's a little more weepier, a little thinner segments. One's a little more stiff. So I can see the variation just between those two.
I will say the one that I've seen a lot of variation now that I think about it is I would say 2.5 years ago now, I got a lot of seed of the Palmetto causiarum off of Frank Glavin at UF. And some of them I kept a couple for myself. Some of them I documented this. Some were look normal, and there were some that were just 2 to 3 times the size. I planted them all at the exact same time, same everything, and some were just monsters. And so I'm curious to see keeping all the vigorous ones and seeing how those look like in a couple of years. I get the joys of doing that, or the advantage, if you will. As you germinate 200 at a time, I get to kind of put the ones off to the side that look the most interesting.
Get any variegated ones? I had a variegated Brazoria, and it threw some variegation, but I don't think it kept it.
No.
But I've got variegated needle palms. I have several of those, and I've got the variegated sable palmetto. But I'm a lover of variegated plants, so
I'm
always looking for the variegated seedlings.
I'm surprised you haven't said Sable Lisa. And the reason I say that is I really haven't told anybody outside of Teddy, Tom, and Joe, but like one of my favorite Lisas here, I have two. So it's not that many to be a favorite from, but I have two. And they've been tanks, right? They've been very much tanks, just like Palmetto has been. But I think one of my two that is the oldest one is definitely a goner at this point. It has not pushed, it hasn't moved. Yeah, I marked it probably 3 weeks ago, and it just hasn't moved at all. There's no spear pull, but it's just I've cleaned it up as best as I can. It got some copper. It's gotten plenty of heat at this point and rain, but that's one where I'm a little bummed out. But as
Did
Teddy
it
knows,
defoliate or? Like this?
No,
No, it's just quit growing.
it just stopped growing, and the emergent spear and the spear that was tucked into it completely freeze dried. So they just got burned to high heaven, and they just haven't moved.
Well, I'll tell you this: I've planted two and lost both of them to bud rot.
I know. I
And
I had four. So I bought two, planted these two, and then I loved them so much, got two more. The other two I planted, they both died that next year or the year after that. So Lisa's have been particularly tricky, but I take solace in the fact that in talking to Joe, he's like, I had to get through three Urasana silvers to get to the one that's currently living. And it sucks because it happens, but hate it
and I
happens to
that's
me.
yeah, and that's Sabal, and that's probably why I didn't mention it. It's she's been a tough one, and and it wasn't even a bad winter. Uh, and then one of them, it just the center pulled on it later in the year, and so that's two that I've lost, and I've had the same like with the Mexicana the same way, but I put in a Mexicana last week. I got another one I just planted last week and put in my the
Palmet.
variegated palmetto last week and put in some more stuff. So, but yeah, the Sabals, you think they are so tough, but yeah, now I think about it, some of them can be a little
Finicky,
heartbreaking
right?
yeah,
How
yeah.
so on this Lisa, out of curiosity, I'm one that, I'm an eternal optimist, if you will. So I'm sitting here going, come on, you're going to do it. You're going to wake up one day and you're going to grow because hasn't spirit pulled, but it literally has not moved. How long would you, and I'll give it a while just because it's been in the ground since 2020. I want to say 2022. So it's probably a 15 gallon at this point. I was really excited. And what's so weird is I have one on the south side of the yard and then I have one in front of the house, and they seem to trade since I planted them. The one on the south side had a crappier winter, and the one by the house did better. And they swapped. And this year, the one on the south side of the house literally looks, it didn't freeze at all. There's like no burn, no defoliation. It looks like nothing happened. And I was very, very confident on the one in front. And then this happened. So if you were me, Hayes, how long, how long should I wait? And B, I've done copper, I've peroxided, I have cut back as much as I can to kind of give it as much room to dry out. Um, what else can I possibly do? I guess those two questions.
I would throw, have you done a soil test? Do you know what your pH is or
Not
what your
lately.
soil?
Not not
I would
lately.
do a soil test, and of course, the other thing that comes to mind is maybe try Epsom salts. If there's some magnesium or something, I would try anything. I think I'd throw anything at it. You did the fungicides. Try some different nutrients to see if you can get it to kick in and grow. But yeah, that
I
just
fertilized
that's
it. I fertilized
yeah.
it probably 2, 3 weeks ago. And usually I wait for heat and rain. And we've had a good amount of rain this year. So I was really, really hoping, and I hate to say it, but I don't mind admitting when I'm wrong or overconfident. But that's one of the ones where palmettos and Mexicanas I have seen and these Lisas, they have just been over the years, they have been very carefree, very, very carefree. I have a palmetto back over there. Actually, I have two that were planted at the exact same time, probably as like maybe a liner size. And one of them now is probably 8 feet tall and looks really, this is going to be a big, big year for it. One literally 4 feet away. No, no, not that much. 8 feet away, 8 feet away. Has had plenty of bud issues over the year. Last year, it definitely rotted and it took it a couple of months, but it finally pushed. And once it pushed out all the garbage, it looked pretty decent over the year. And this year again, it's got bud rot again, and it's kind of sitting there, right? So it's like it's amazing how they can do literally 10 feet apart in the same environment, but maybe their persons are different and one's a wimp and one's a champion. Like, I don't know, but I've
Well,
seen Palmetto has just been very, very odd for me, way more so than any Mexicana. I have a Miamiensis right here I'm looking at that is just, it doesn't burn. It looks, there's no spotting. I have a Blackburniana right here that looked green everywhere up until about a week and a half ago. And then the emergent spear and the one tucked into it completely freeze dried all of a sudden in May.
Well, that's that cryptic damage
Yeah.
is you get used to that when you're growing palms and pushing them. I think a lot of times, when it gets first, you get your first 90-degree day, everything, and you get these ups and downs when you get cold damage. If you go the week after, oh, that was a bad cold snap, but all the palms look great, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, they start going. Then you're like all depressed because they've got damage. And then all of a sudden they start to grow again, when you get that first good warm day in spring, and then you get really hot, and then they'll collapse. So you can go back and forth. And a lot of times it's just, you've got enough damage in the tissues that they can't keep up when it gets really hot. And you'll see that quite a bit if you're pushing the limits, things. And then all of a sudden it may totally push back out. And I've had beauty I dug up a beauty at one time that way back when, and this is when I learned, probably back, I think it was in 94, 96, we had really cold, and I had a beauty, and the whole center pulled out, and I dug it up and chunked it in the woods, and I found it in the woods in July, and it had turned a spear up and was growing.
Wow.
So I've learned, don't give up until no. And sometimes even when you think it's dead, it's not. I thought for sure that was dead because the whole center pulled out.
I do not want to give up on this Blackburniana or this Lisa because it's been such a tank. So I'm, even though Tom and Joe and Teddy are like, I'm getting emojis of the dead skull and crossbone. Boys, I'm not giving up. I'm gonna keep this damn thing going all through summer. And I just, they've pulled through. And this Blackburniana, man, this thing's been a tank over the years, and it's just like in May, unbelievable.
Well, and I know there's a, I don't, this is one I need to get in the ground, but there was a Palm Society member here named Connie Mac Dobbs, and unfortunately, Connie Mac passed away last year. He has a huge Sabal domingensis in his backyard here, and it was a booger to grow. It got burned, and it would, the warm up, and the whole thing would turn brown, but then it put back out. But as it got larger, it finally said, "Okay, I'm gonna do." So he had a nice one in his back area. Had lots of cool palms there, and but that was one I was really jealous of that he had, because I need to get one and try one at the gardens. But Domingensis was a one that he was able to have a success with.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And of course the Riverside too. That's another one that's one of those Caribbean. I love those Caribbean Sabals because they're so big. The crowns are huge, the leaves are huge, and it's just it gives you a really different look.
I love me Bermudanas. I that's always one that I wanted when I first got into this hobby in 2020. I'm relatively new to this hobby, but when I got into it, I don't know why. Like there's just something attracted me to them, the size, and they just look so big and stately. And I bought three of them. Got one on the south side, one up against the house, and one a little bit off the house. And I've noticed, they're like a Mexicana here for me. Once it gets like 15 or 14, then they start to take their foliar damage. But I've just learned to just leave them alone, and it's like our Mexicana back here. It's as it gets larger, I mean, it makes sense, but as it gets larger, if you can get it through its first couple of years, that's just the thought of like get it through the first couple of years, and then they get hardier as they get older. And they seem every year now, they seem to take less and less damage on the leaves. And I'm optimistic that over the years they'll get larger and they'll get hardier. That's my hope. I love Bermuda.
I think that's definitely the way things work. And I think you get the palm established, you get some size to it, you get it healthy. and it will take lower temperatures. It has a better root system to maintain the moisture it needs when you've got freezing, desiccating winds, and a well-established, healthy, larger plant of any species of palm we're growing, I think will be better to take the cold.
Right.
The thing is we get a little anxious. I want to, do you want to get it in the ground? Because we all know sabals are tough to grow in pots. So you want to put them in when they're small, and I sometimes I do that, but sometimes I will go ahead and protect them, put a heap a pile of pine straw on them, if we're getting a bad winter, or even just throw a blanket over them. And one of the things I think a lot of people don't realize too, you see a lot of people growing like sabal palmetto and things pretty far north, but you got to think about that bud eventually is going to get above ground too. And when that palm gets a little taller, sometimes it can be just exposed to the more cold than it was if it were subterranean trunk. So but that's one thing you got to kind of balance out there too. But by getting them established, you can kind of that counteracts a little bit of that too. So as it gets bigger, it has a better root system and can take a little more cold.
For sure. Just the whole mass of the plant,
Mm-hmm.
like an adult human outside can, kind of stand in the cold a little better than a young kid.
Right, and I just put in a small Phoenix theophrastii, and I'm going to try it both ways. I put a smaller one in, 5 gallon, uh, last spring, and we got 12 degrees, so I put some Christmas lights and threw a blanket over it, so I protected it. And I want to see if it'll grow faster and get established faster than the one I have that I'm going to grow to like a 15-gallon pot and plant. So, and a lot of times you see, even with trees, you see a landscaper put in a 20-foot tree, and you can put in a 10-gallon potted tree versus a, big, huge B&B tree. That smaller tree will catch up and pass that other one in a matter of few years. So and around here too, I think the same with Sabal palmetto. You bring one in, and our climate, and and in zone 8A, you need to protect that palm. It's
Correct.
like a big cutting. And if we get a bad winter, you need to put some lights and protect it until at least 5 years. I tell people, but you plant one in a container, that thing will jump and go.
I was just going to say that because I see people here are very big on buying either field dug ones that are like a good 5 feet of trunk or 7 feet of trunk, and they struggle. They won't make it past year 1 or 2. And I always make the comment of I tell people they don't have a lot of roots when they pull those out of the ground and they wrap them in burlap, right? And they're probably also grown in Florida, where they don't have to ever deal with these kinds of winters. And imagine taking a southerner and just all of a sudden saying, hey, go to Chicago after you've never been in Chicago and you're not prepared. Like you said, they need a couple of years of help before the root system can actually catch up to what's happening above ground. Otherwise, they're going to suffer.
My uncle moved to Chicago, and he was complaining about his cold feet, and someone finally looked and said, "Oh my God, you're not wearing winter socks." He's like, "It's winter socks," but it's the same. The Sabals, like in Florida, especially, they grow almost year round. I mean, they're that warm, and we have a definite 4 seasons here, so they're not initiating growth and root growth. So they're kind of in a period of stasis. So you've really got to baby and keep them wet. I mean, I water them every day if it were me. Keep them wet, and it's because it's like a big cutting, and most of those cut roots will die. So it's got to reinitiate all those roots. So I love to see those regenerated palmettos, that they put in and let them have some time and warmth to get roots already going, and that will help you out. But if you're moving a big one in zone 8A, either cross your fingers and hope that you got several mild winters, and if you do have a severe winter, like 10 degrees, 12 degrees or something, I would wrap it with some Christmas lights and put a little layer of blankets on it.
Well, and the other thing you mentioned earlier was, and I know this happens to us, and I think for Teddy, this happens just because you're used to it already. But here in Dallas, I've learned, always, and I've only been here over 6.5 years, but I get very complacent that we get our cold spell, and I'm like, okay, like 2 winters ago, our first hit got down to 21, and we got to like February, end of January, early February. I was like, all right, cool. We're getting closer to where the chances are going to start going down for a tragic one. And we're gonna get more sun, and we're kind of getting to that point. I got a little optimistic, and then we get another like 12 degree, and I'm just like, damn it. It's not the first one. It's the second one that hits them hard, right?
Have you ever dug one up? You jump the gun and you get it in the ground and you think, okay, it's late February. And actually, I try to do all my planting, even my palms. A lot of times I plant in November through February. Now, I wouldn't plant
Really?
something marginal. Yes, just because I have so much to take care of. Trachycarpus, uh, uh, I put in nanotals in my house this year. I put in Bulgarias. I put in Trachycarpus Nova time. It was a hybrid. I put in Sabal Defuniac, Sabal Palmetto. But what I did is we had that one night of 12 degrees. I took a blanket and threw over them. I didn't put any heat or anything just to be on the safe side. But 12 is, but yeah, I especially Trachycarpus because they're pretty tough here. The only time I lose Trachycarpus here is one, they're not healthy. And they can become unhealthy. I have a tough time growing. We have sandy soil. The botanical garden is 2 miles from here. It's sandy soil, and they do not like. I have a tough time growing trachees there. I have a beautiful woodsy organic soil here, but it can get really dry if it's dry. It turns to powder.
Yep.
But if they're not well established or if they're unhealthy, we've had some drought or something and that summer and they don't get established, then I've lost them usually. But established ones are usually fine. But getting them early and getting them established helps them get rooted in before the next year.
Well,
So,
that's the general guidance for like, all your fruit trees or all your trees, right? I mean, do it while they're dormant. But
mhm.
I've never heard anyone say like if I would say that to Tom would probably like punch me in the face. Like there's no
And it's like one of those things is do as I say and not as I do because I have to do it because I have a 15-acre garden that I do by myself. So
Wow.
I do all my planning and I have 2 weeks off for Christmas. With extension, we follow the university schedule. That's the 2 weeks try to do all my planning, everything, camellias, palms, everything. Now, if it's something like bananas, of course, I wait till past frost, but
Yeah.
any tree or shrub goes in, and I did them this year, and in fact, the Trachycarpus, a lot of them I did not. They were 2 and 3 gallons at 12 degrees. It didn't hurt them, but if we would have had that -1 or something, them not being established would hurt them. But the toughest one is right behind me. This one right here, that's Nanotol. Uh, to me, that is the ultimate fortune eye selection, and it's the fastest, it's the biggest, and it is tough as nails. So I grew some seed off of this one, and so I'm doing a new parking area, and I'm lining the whole edge of it with Nanotols. And
Nice.
but I've got Nanotol, I've got Bulgaria, I've got Taylor, and I've got Charlotte, and I've got just local ones. There's a tree farm here that grows them in the field here in Calhoun County. Just fortune eye. He planted Butea too. That didn't work out so well. But you can Trachycarpus is pretty good. I think really if you're in zone 8A, you're in good Trachycarpus country. You get a little as you get warmer, they get a little more heat stress. And like you said, mine grow. They will grow in the winter. If we get a good rain, warm
Yeah.
rain in
Oh
the
yeah.
winter, they'll put out a leaf.
Yep.
Spring, they go crazy.
Yep.
They slow down in the summer, and then they go crazy again in the fall. So
I need to get more into trackies. I I only have two, but I know Teddy's always giving me grief. I need to get more into them.
For
I
sure.
got Dana's, and we're putting in a Princeps next week. I already got the hole dug, so that's going in. I got a 15-gallon Princeps. Um, Wagner's, and it's funny they always said Wagner's are cold hardy. Not from my experience. I've lost more Wagner's. I even lost a big Wagner a couple of years ago one winter. Uh,
Really.
yeah, it just they just don't seem to be quite as hardy for me, and I don't know why. And it may be too. They may be a little heat drought stress. We're getting some crazy droughts lately. It's really the droughts that we're getting, and I'm worried now because we're dry as can be. This is the season we get all the rain: March, April, May,
Yeah.
June, and we're not getting it.
Same here. Yeah.
I think relief is coming, boys. If you look at the map or over the next week, we're set to get like 4 to 6 inches of rain, but it looks like it's going the whole south and southeast, especially. So hope you guys get some rain because
It,
yeah,
it's
it
yeah, and
sucks.
that makes a difference on getting things established because you can water all you want, but having a wholesale heavy rain and a good ground soaking really does the trick.
Our water
And
is not the same as rain.
it's
You
not.
could you could try all you want, but it makes, I mean, I laugh even when we irrigate either our foundation or the yard or whatever, things grow, or even I hand water, but after a good half an inch and a half of rain, you can go outside and see the visible growth. Like it's just nice, fresh, green new growth. So they definitely do appreciate actual rain. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
and I guess you get nutrients in the rain. It comes through the atmosphere, picks up nitrogen, and also you get that blanket where you're watering at the base of the plant. You still got that dry periphery, so
Yeah.
those roots aren't able to
Yep.
reach out into that. It's still like they're in the pot. And of course, when I watered all those nanotals yesterday that I planted, I was like, if I'm going to water, I'm going to water well. I'm going to water deep, and I'm going to water wide, so they get a good soaking and soak that ground where those roots can expand out into it.
Yeah,
So,
'cause
but
that's the other thing. The dry soil around it will start sucking the moisture away from the plants too.
yep.
You got to, as soon as you start watering them when it's dry, you got to stay on it too.
And I think I usually try. We're talking about if you look at Anniston's records, we don't get any single digits really after mid-February. So a lot of times, if I will put things in, right after Valentine. I always say between Thanksgiving and Valentine's is the best time to plant. Once we get those fall rains and the soil moisture gets up, and then go on, and plant. And then if you're worried about something, if you can wait till a little after Valentine's Day, you can get those palms in. That's good too. But there's that one exception. We had the blizzard of '93 in March. That was we got down to 12 degrees. Had 18 inches of snow and 80-mile-an-hour winds. That was a doozy.
Phew.
So, but
Wow.
I had just planted my trachycarpus, the big ones out by my drive on the other side, in November of '92, and they were 7 gallons. I dropped them in, and by March we were 12 and had 18 inches of snow. So, but they did fine. They did fine.
Let me ask you a question. So, this is less of a, well, it's a problem here for me in both places, both here and at my ranch, that I'm so desperately trying to get water and get my infrastructure up and running so I can actually get to planting what you have behind you. That's my goal too, is I have 30 acres of piney woods, East Texas, that I've already cleared out a lot of spots, and I've opened stuff up under the pines. And my goal is to have what you have in your right over your shoulders there. But the question I have for you is, so I'm terrible about spacing stuff out. I have a vision of how things look in 3 to 5 years, not 5 to 25 or 30 years. I've gotten better. I've learned because I have some spots over here now that things are competing. And even here behind me are Mexicana and Louisiana, even just 2 years ago, were pretty far apart. Now they're almost touching, and you could see this is going to turn into a really awesome area. So the question I have is, when you did your plantings over there at your place, did you do everything with like all your measurements in mind, or did you just kind of play it by ear, hope things all work out?
Both. A lot of times, I know how big it's going to get, so I space at that, and it looks a little barren for a while, and it eventually fills in.
Yep.
I don't mind that in some areas, but some areas I don't want it to. I want it to look landscaped and complete. And one of those areas was right here at the entrance where you come up to the deck of my house. I stuck in stuff really close, and all in that one area. I've got needle palm, I've got a Butea jubea, which to me is the best of all the Butea. If you're going to do want a good Butea, get a Butea jubea hybrid. Uh, but luckily, palms get vertical, and you
Yeah.
can kind of layer stuff. So that nanotall right there is kind of gone above the Butea jubea, and then I had another trachycarpus on the other side. It was a dwarf. Speaking of, I grew two trachycarpus that were dwarfs. One I had at my grandmother's. It only grew like 5 feet in 25 years, and little tiny crown, little tiny leaves.
Wow.
Uh, and the other one was a dwarf as well. And I decided it looked kind of funny, so I stripped all the fiber off of it and gave it a bare trunk. It looked kind of cool, but I got ambrosia beetles on it.
Oh,
So it died, but yeah, I kind of packed the stuff in there at the front entrance. And I have this rule at my house that if you look out any window, you see a palm tree. So if you look out
a
any
good
window,
rule.
I have palm trees. So when it's cold inside and 18 degrees, and on a cold January day, I can open up the plantation shutters and it looks like I'm in a tropical climate. So,
That's awesome.
but but yeah, I do both. I try to sometimes to space them the way they need to be spaced, but sometimes I'll tuck them in pretty tight to fill in that area and to I'm running out of space. I've got 15 acres here, and I did have I just bought 5 acres last year, so a strip next to me. My neighbor sold me a strip of his farm property, so now I've planted about 100 varieties of camellias over there, and that's where I've been planting the new palms as well. And my plan eventually is on that property. I've put in access roads where we can pull right up to them and we can transplant them, and I can move them to the botanical garden.
Awesome.
So it's a kind of like a growing area. So trachees, they move pretty well compared to most. So that's where I've been putting all these trachycarpus to have them, have mature plants that we can move if we need them.
Oh, that makes sense.
Mhm.
That's very cool.
Hmm.
I just like the dense canopy. Like it makes me think that you're like in Costa Rica. I'm expecting a howler monkey to come from one side of the screen to the other.
That everybody that comes to my garden goes, I feel like I'm in Vietnam or I'm on in another country, and I'm like, that's
That's
exactly what I
awesome.
wanted.
I
That's
love it.
exactly was my goal. But I do. I live in an old growth forest. I've got 110-foot trees here. It's a wild, crazy ride when we get an inland hurricane or severe thunderstorm. Hurricane Zeta hit here. I had the eye wall go right over me, and I lost 2,200-foot trees,
Wow.
and it tore up some stuff. It really it was really this side of town caught the eye wall. My mom lives on the other side, and they had wind, but nothing damaging it. It took off roofs and uh, 2 weeks without power for my neighbors. Luckily it was only 5 days here, so but I'm still cleaning up. That's been several years, but yeah, it's a challenge sometimes with these tall trees. They sap the moisture, and of course when a limb comes down, or and I have lots of shade, but the area across from me was logged, and it was a real estate cut, so they didn't cut down everything. So, but it was all privet. So I've been cleaning out all that privet
Oh,
and
I
replacing
hate
it with,
privet. I
yeah, that's
hate
my worst
th
weed invasive here.
It's terrible, and they're easy to pull out when they're young, but when they get just a little bit older, they're you either got to dig them out or you just have to like either burn them or something. But they'll come back. They're terrible.
Yeah, and one thing that I've been able to clear all that out, and it's really pretty, but it's a nicely spaced, larger trees, and so there's not as much root competition. And now I've got access to go ahead and plant some things over there that I can move, at a later date. So that's what I'm putting a lot of the windmill palms. I just put in six 3-gallon nanotals over at the Longleaf Event Center. We put those in Friday, and I'll probably add some of these when we do a new visitor center or something eventually down the road. We'll have some nice size to put in. But
So hey,
nanotol
Hayes, I want to switch. I want to switch topics here really quick before we run out of time or forget. So, when we went to the Palm Society meeting there, you did a plant sale, and I know you do those frequently. What, twice a year? Maybe you do a plant sale at a Longleaf. Is that right?
Well, we do them every third Thursday of the month. So next Thursday we have a sale from 10 to 5 at Longleaf, and we offer a lot of these palms. I had a guy come in, and of course we have a big spring plant sale. It's the fourth Friday in April. So in April we hold off. We do our big sale in April, but every month except December is the third Thursday. Otherwise, I had a guy come in from St. Clair County between here and Birmingham, and I think he bought just about every palm we had. I had a lot, and we grow them just at I do community pots, and I'll save some to put on the grounds, and then we pot the rest up, and we'll have them for sale at our plant sales. So, and then I also, as part of my job, I teach a horticulture therapy program at Coosa Valley Youth Services. So there's a youth home there, and we have a greenhouse there, and we just had that. We do a yearly plant sale. We just had that 2 weeks ago, and we grow a lot of palms and different things there as well. Um, and But we're going to start doing, I think, that on third Thursday too. So you can hit two places. So if you come into Anniston, you get to tour. You can go and tour the two. We have two wonderful museums: the Museum of Natural History, the Berman Museum of World History, and then the botanical gardens are free. It's We really don't have an admission for the gardens because it's basically all the areas surrounding the other museums. But yeah, I'd love to have you come down. Anybody come down, come visit, take the palm tour. You can see all these. The museum, like I said, I volunteered there when I was 13. And
Wow.
I'm 60 now. So I've been working there a lot, and I knew then as a kid that was a microclimate. I mean, because I would go in December and they still hadn't had a frost, where we usually get our frost in second week of November is pretty typical, and then it warms back up, but it would be into December there because it's 2-story concrete faces southeast. So we've got the tropical courtyard. I've put in mule palms. I've got super mule in there now. We've got European fan palm, jubea. The jubea doesn't like it in that courtyard. The subsoil is hard pan clay. And so I've got a new one. I just put another one outside the courtyard. So it's got much better soil. I think it'll do better. But What else we got? I've got Camadoria in the ground, Brahias, of course, all the Sabals. Serenoa does great here. I'm amazed how hardy Serenoa is here in Anniston.
Yep.
That was one of the first palms. We had a beach house in Destin growing up, and I dug up I don't know how many Serenoas and brought them home, and never got them to really. They never really thrived. I got them to live, but they just kind of sat there. But this lady here in town, Margaret Harrison, she passed away. She was a member of the Palm Society too. I happened to drive by a house, and there was this huge green Serenoa, and she had dug it up in Orlando back in the 70s, and it's still
Mm.
there. Her daughter owns the house, and it's a nice, big, healthy Serenoa. So it went through, and it's right near the airport where they take the temperature measurements. I mean, you can see the airport from our house. So it was -5, and survived that.
Minus
So
five?
in 1985 that's our record coldest temperature. That's
Wow.
right when I started growing palms. So
It's funny how
uh,
that works, isn't it?
yeah,
See, Tom, you and Hayes are really similar, I think, in your climates, honestly. Like maybe a little bit different. You're obviously out west and you got a little bit drier, maybe get a little bit more hot, but you guys are similar. What he grows, I think you can grow.
I I think so. So yes, I think for some reason we seem to stay under freezing longer. At least maybe, but I guess the thing that I keep thinking about is, again, I'm newer to this hobby. You obviously have been doing this for a long time, so I love to hear, this longer term perspective, right? I have 6 winters under my belt in this hobby, in this area. And it's been like the worst 6 winters you could probably ever have in this hobby, in this area for a long time. So my perspective kind of sucks. I really think our winters are horrible. But then again, I lived in Illinois for my entire life. So I'm hoping that over the course of time, yes, I probably will have what you have, or I'm capable of having what you have, possibly even more. It just all depends on the period of time that I'm living in and I'm growing in, right? Because I mean, the thing for us is, Thomas said this. If you want to grow a trunking palm, you have to be an average of over 50 degrees in January. And we can definitely satisfy that. Like that definitely happens here. And we really crank up the heat, and our spring rains, our winter rains help a lot. It gets pretty dry in the summertime. But yeah, I mean, I do think I could probably grow a lot of what you can grow. I'm surprised that you've been as lucky as you have with a Jubea or the Butias even in general, because I know they don't like the humidity, and Jubea especially is not a big fan of humidity.
Yeah, and the that's why I always say beauty of Jubea. If you can get your hands on one of those, you get an incredibly hardy Butea, basically a giant fat Butea. Uh, it's the one that's right back here. I don't know if you can see it. I don't think you can barely see it back there. But Merrill Wilcox out of University of Florida gave me that as a 1 gallon, uh, and it's one of my treasure plants here. If not the most treasure plants because of that, he gave it to me, and he flew up here just to see. He didn't believe. He goes, I honestly didn't believe you had a Jubea, and he's like, yep, that's a Jubea. And of course it was so healthy, and I had it planted on a mound in my cactus garden, so it never got irrigation. But it the voles is that's my biggest nemesis. So that's why I planted that other one over there. But I think those roots have gotten down into that hard pan clay, and it just kind of stopped growing, and it looks horrible. So I had one donated by a, a SPEPS member, a Palm Society member from Tennessee. Um, he was living in Arizona and had it growing out there in a huge pot, brought it with him to Tennessee, and was like, I know it's not going to grow here. So I drove up there and we gave it a home here. So it's going on its second winter in the ground and looks great.
Let me
That's
ask
awesome.
you one more question, because I think well, a lot more questions, but this is probably on the minds of a lot of people. So I've seen when you guys get your cold winters or your weather over the winter time, I see you guys are out there protecting. You guys, toss your blankets over everything, right? Uh, is there a point, because you made the comment of this is my prize? I look at, like, I have a Butea Jubea, which is questionable. I think it is, but how much of it is, I don't really know. It seems to be harder than any other Butea I've tried here. I've killed 2 other ones, and this one seems to do substantially better. It's like maybe 50 feet away from the other 2 that have died. But I protect it every single year, and it's probably one of the only ones I protect. And I mean, it's getting fat to the point where I can't put my arms around it fat anymore. And it's going to probably be at the height where my wife is not going to want to help me get it on a ladder and protect anymore. She's always been very, very helpful, and she, helps me tie up all the petioles up, so it's just very much tall, and we wrap it up. At some point, I'm not going to be able to do that. And what sucks is, the question here for you is, at what point do you kind of say, I can't take care of this anymore? It's off on its own and it has to get through the winters. And when do you just keep going until you get to that point? Or is there a point? Or are there palms that you
Well,
have that you're like, I'll go rent a cherry picker. I don't care. I'll go protect it.
yeah, well, have you seen? I often post a picture of the Washingtonia robusta at Longleaf. I call it the world's jankiest robusta because it's it's too big to protect to cover fully.
Yeah.
It's 20 feet tall,
Holy
but
moly.
what
20
I
feet?
think it's dead this year. I think it's a goner, and I've been
Yeah, the
saying,
crown was like
like,
this big on it last year.
yeah, that's the little constriction was from 2015. That was that back-to-back winter. Um, and what we started, I used to cover it, and it looked great, and then it got, it's very spiny, it's very big, and it got too tall, and now we just cover the trunk as high up as we can go, and the crown sticks up. I figure it's better than leaving it, but there's no way, we just can't cover it. And I've always known it was on borrowed time, but I was just surprised it made it through these past 3 winters with just a blanket on the trunk. The crown was up above, and it would always burn back. And I'm like, oh, it's dead. And then the next thing you know, it pushes out. And I'm like, okay, here we go, another year.
Wow.
But so you just kind of enjoy the time you had it, I guess. And now I told our greenhouse person, I said, let's just plant a mandevilla on it and make it a trellis,
Yeah,
dress it up as best we can. And we may just have to cut it down, and I'll give it till, like I said, till July, and we'll see what happens. But this is the first year it hasn't pushed out by now. So, but I say do what you can and what you're willing to do, but don't put yourself in danger, and don't put your whole life in the hands of keeping one plant alive. Um, this Beauty of Jubea is too big to cover. I just I may put just wrap the trunk, and a lot of times you just keep that trunk. In the Phoenix dactylifera at the botanical garden is the same way. I can't cover it. I just wrap the as high up as I can on the trunk, keep that trunk warm. We lose the foliage, and it puts back out. It's pushing back out this year. So and you just learn, and sometimes you just hope for the best. But
I
we'll put another
I
one
love
in and
Phoenix.
start over.
I love Phoenix. I really
Mm-hmm.
do. Yeah.
And I think really the best Phoenix here are the hybrids, because dactylifera, that is a dactylifera. I lived in Los Angeles for about 3 years. I picked it up at a nursery. It's a variety called Honey. Um, it's an edible date, but it's also getting too much shade now. It's getting shaded out by a blackjack oak that has grown tremendously. So I actually put in another dactylifera in this year, to anticipating that one's probably not going to be there much longer, but it's 15 feet tall. It's big.
Wow.
Um, the best dates if you want to grow are the hybrids. And if you go down in North Florida and South Alabama, they're not Canariensis. They're probably, they're Canariensis crossed with Sylvestris. Sylvestris, I've got Sylvestris time dactylifera, and it's doing okay. It gets damaged every year. It's too tall to protect, but the foliage burns back. But the hybrids seem to have the best of both worlds, kind of like the Washingtonia. The best Washingtonia for us by far is filibusta. Robusta is not hardy enough. Filifera is very sensitive. I always get bud issues, and it just doesn't like the spring rains. Of course, this year it'd have been happy. We hadn't had any. But the hybrid is the best. Same with those big healthy hybrids that go through a lot of cold in North Florida.
How do we find those hybrids, Hayes?
I went down. If you go down to Madison, Florida, there's some huge hybrids planted all in that. You can tell they're hybrids because they don't look like Canariensis, and they don't look like Sylvestris. Uh, they are. I just collected seed, and I've grown them from seed. I've got a couple of them in 15 gallons, and I'll get them in the ground. But that's always the thing to do is provenance. Whether native or if you
Yep.
can find palm that's fruiting in a really cold climate, that's some good genetics right there. So if you're ever in Madison, Florida, North Florida, just below, I guess it's kind of below Valdosta. Valdosta would be another place to collect. There's a lot of hybrid Phoenix in Valdosta, but the more east you go, the warmer it gets. So get over there. There used to be huge Phoenix, and I've seen some Phoenix now in Dothan, which is in southeast Alabama. Dothan's probably a um, good almost 9A right through there. It's right in that corner, so that's a good place to look for them.
I have a
But
Canariensis probably about 15 minutes from my house here in Dallas. It defoliates every single year, but it's probably, I would say, at least 12 to 15 feet tall at this point. And every single year it defoliates. And by now it's already pushing out a beautiful, beautiful crown. And I've been tempted, I just drive by it, but I've been tempted to stop by the homeowners and ask them, hey, if this thing ever seeds, can you please call me and let me know? Because it would be something to definitely try to get some,
but
seeds from because
well, if there's only one, you're not going to get seed. That's
oh,
the
that's
thing.
true.
Yeah, so you
Oh,
gotta you gotta have a couple. That's why I go.
ah,
You gotta have a male and female. And
you
if
know
it's a
what?
female, you can go and pollinate it. And you can get seed. But if it's male, there's nothing you
Oh,
can
that's a
do.
good point. I forgot about that. A learning lesson, everybody.
Not all palms are Sabals, Tom.
I know. I for
And I guess they say that about this. Speaking of that too, this palm behind me was male for years. It just produced male flowers, and then a few years ago, it started throwing female flowers.
Really,
So
Lynette? Really?
Trachycarpus can change, um, and I've had that happen. And like I've got the two out back now. The one out back is it is most likely a Wagner Fortunae cross, and it definitely has a different look to it. It's very stiff, very kind of open crown. Tony Avent from Plant Delights saw it, and we were talking about it. And he got seed. It's female, and I think he introduced that one as Hey Stiffy, so because it has the really stiff leaf. But that's the one that he had this catalog for a while. And of course, that made the New York Times, I think, garden section. They were talking about hardy palms, and they Trachycarpus haste stiffy. So, but that's the palm that I planted in November of '92. One of those, but I got those out of Mobile. But it is definitely uh, different. But it's always been female, and it always produces fruit. Now, this one, this Nanotol has changed. It's crazy, and
That's
I've
weird.
I've seen that a lot, where all of a sudden, and I think it maybe it's some hormonal thing that you know if on you would think that if they're female and they're not getting pollinated, that they would produce some male flowers. I don't know. It's one of those things. I'd love to know more about that, but I know it happens. I see it, and I know other people that see the palms change sex as far as which kind of flowers they produce.
Yeah, it's really good that we're getting to talk to you and we try to get people on that have a lot more experience than us, Hayes. I don't want to backtrack too far, but one thing you said earlier, I don't want to miss that point was when we were talking about these suspected hybrids, is that you really need a bunch of time because you need those seedlings to grow out and see what they look like. And it takes a long time for these characteristics to develop. Sometimes you need, you know, that suspected parent, you need the seedlings to come out from that to see what they are too. And I mean, this takes 10, 15, 20, 30 years sometimes, you know? So man, a really big credit. I don't want to wash over all the things you mentioned, that you've just done with plants and palms in general. I'll say thank you for everybody, man. Thank you so much for what you've done.
Well, it's a joy for me to do it. I go back when I was 3. I would eat an orange and plant the seed. We lived in Naples, Florida, and I think that's where my love for palms came. And uh, I've got a picture of me, 3 years old, out. We were planting trees, and I wanted palm trees in front of our house at 3. So it's a thing. I love doing it, and to be able to have a job and work where I get to do what I love to do, and then come home and do it again. I feel very fortunate, and I also feel very old.
Don't we all, man? I was just actually making that comment earlier today that like I don't recover from my injuries as fast as I used to. Every year it just gets harder and harder.
Well, and then when I'm sitting here, boy, if I'm looking at seedlings from seedlings on palms, and you're looking at the varieties, you've got to have some years on you to
Sure.
put behind you to look at all that stuff. And you just kind of reminded me of that.
Yep.
So,
Sorry about that.
mm.
I'm glad the last time I saw Gary a couple months ago, I'm glad he got a golf cart. He's at least riding around in that. So he's still making his rounds around the garden, but he's moving a little bit slower these days now in his 80s for sure.
Well, and I say the garden is my gym because I come home, change clothes, go out, and I do a lot of stuff by hand just because I love getting the exercise. And I've got my little four-wheeler back there, but I rarely use it. And I try to get my steps in and get all my lifting, hauling. And earlier today, I was moving all my 15-gallon citrus and fertilizing that. So I'm always got to work out moving these plants, and some of the palms are getting pretty big too in pots. I've got some pretty good size. I do a lot of. I love Chamaedorea microspadics, and I keep them in pots. I have the voles will get them if I put them in the ground, so I keep them in pots and just put them in strategic places in my garden, and really love those. And I got a lot of shade, so I can really use those. But that's a good hardy one too.
You
Hey,
said you had some at Longleaf, didn't you, that are planted? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got radicalis and I got a tree form radicalis over there. And I think I'm going to take some of these microspadics and pop in the ground. We just didn't have they need some shade. They need morning shade too, They don't want to be frozen and have the sun come in. So I've got to find a good spot for them. There's one called Eileen, which is a hybrid between radicalis, which is the hardiest, and microspadics, which is probably the next hardiest. So you get a hybrid of the two. That came out of Pensacola, um, palm guy down there. So I've got one of those here too, which is nice.
are you well
But
water or are you city water?
I'm city water, and I have a well for the garden. But the well's been hit by lightning twice recently, so it's down again. I've got it, and I can't. It's hard to get. There's not many people that do pull wells now. It's submersible pump. So, but I've got to work on that and get back on the well. But apparently, I'm on a lightning spot. My house has been hit 11 times over the years. So the
Wow.
power company's like, buy an arrestor, we'll put it on for you. So, but yeah, there's something about this hill with the lightning. So, but as soon as I get that well back, I'll have well water, which I think is better. I do pitcher plants too, so I need that well water.
Um, the other thing I was going to ask you is you keep talking about voles, which is interesting because I feel like I live in the woods here. I've got oak trees where I wouldn't say old growth, but some of these trees are very, very old and they're large. And I don't see voles. I deal with squirrels that aim to make my life hell by killing everything that they can get their hands on early in the year. And then rabbits that also enjoy trying to make my life hell early in the
And
year.
chipmunks. Do you have
And
chipmunks?
yeah, I have
Yep.
chipmunks. Yeah, yeah.
Chipmunks ate. I had 3 flats of jubea seeds that took 9 months to germinate,
Oh,
and they were all one leaf seedlings, and they pulled every seedling up and ate the green off of them.
the
Oh,
exact same thing happened to me. I actually had them before we had our greenhouse a couple of years ago. I had some young jubeas that I was given, and one day I just walked outside and I was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding!" And the worst part of it is, it's like how they do it on fruit trees. They'll just take like one bite and they'll render it useless, and then they just leave like, "Haha." It's the worst.
Well, the rabbits got my nanorops here too. They ate it down to the ground and it died. It just they ate it to a nub. But and that's why I planted. I've got the nanorops. It's at Longleaf now. I had a median downtown on 8th Street that I planted. I was like, there's going to be no voles there. It's 2 lane, 4 lanes of traffic going, back and forth, and on a median island in the city. and that Nanorops was there. Of course, they had some traffic changes. We're talking about putting in a turning lane, so we moved all that to the botanical garden. So that Nanorops was transplanted, and it almost died. It did not like to be moved. It lost the main trunk, but all the little trunks came back. So, but it's a good 6 feet high and maybe 8 feet high across now, I guess.
On
That's
your
beautiful.
on your nanorops, is that the green form or is that the silvery form? Because there's a lot of back and forth about that's one that I killed one here, and then I have one up against the house right here, and it's green. I was gifted another one that's probably a 15 gallon that's going to be going to my ranch, which is more of like the silvery bluish. And I was told that the green one is hardier, the silver blue one is not, but that would go against everything, because you tend to find your Urasana silver ones pretty hardy, and I've just seen like all the silver blue type stuff is hardier. Same thing for like your Chamarops. But this one, it's on its fourth year. And what's interesting is it's got probably five trunks now at this point. And the thing I've noticed is for the first couple of years, it's spear pulled on every single trunk. And it's one of those ones where it's spear pulled and it comes back. But what's interesting is when you had yours, A, did it ever spear pull? B, is it a green or the silver blue one? And then C, um, I noticed that the new leaves that came out, even though they may have been characteristic when they pulled, it's like they go back and reset and they go back to strap leaf. So for the first couple years, when it came back in the spring, it was doing what it did last spring. This year, it didn't spear pull at all, and it's got characteristic leaves still. So I'm pretty excited about that.
It's probably another one of those that it gets established and gets bigger, it will get hardier. I planted this one as a little 3 gallon. Probably the leaves were 18 inches and they weren't even fully divided. I just mulched it really good for the winter, and I think 1 year it did have like it would lose the spear. It tends to, how some palms damage from the outside in, and
Yes.
some palms damage from the inside out. It tends to damage for me from the outside in. You'll get damage on the outer tips of the older leaves, and the spear seems fine. And then it just grows right out of it just fine. And I guess Serenoa is kind of it always damages from inside out, where I always have damage on that newly emerging leaf, but it
Correct.
pushes right back out. But yeah, it's more of a green. It's kind of a gray green. It's not the blue.
Okay.
It's and it's been I'd never protect it except when it was little. I mulched it in with some pine straw. Now it's on its own. It's wide open. Teddy, I think you remember seeing it. How I mean, it's on that hill.
Oh
What's
yeah.
Yeah, and most people don't realize how mountainous east central Alabama is. Uh, the highest point in the states, just right near Anniston, it's over 2,400 feet. Uh, and it's definitely colder up there, but I can tell a difference. If we got a Arctic a front and there's wind, the botanical garden's 2 miles away, but it's 1,000 feet at the high around the event center there. I sit at 760 at the top of the hill, 660 at the bottom. I got a 100-foot drop. So, but it's exposed to the wind. It gets, it gets it's pretty exposed up there, and it's always if it gets a little bit of burn, it always comes back.
Well,
It did pretty well this year at 12. It just had some minor outer foliage burn.
well, that's interesting because you made me think of something that could be a variable of all the years. Our landscape beds had old mulch back when we moved in, and I didn't really do a great job of properly, like, really thick mulching everything. Last year, my wife went a little overboard and bought 9 pallets of mulch. We had a lot of mulch on my driveway. In fact, I still have 5 bags on the side of my driveway that I'm still trying to find spots for. But we went very heavy and like early in the spring, we mulched everything around here. So this was actually the first year that it had very deep, heavy mulch. So I wonder if that had made a difference because I was just sad because I'm thinking if every year it goes back to strap leaf, this is going to be unbearable. Unbearable. It sucks, but it's still keeping characteristic leaves. So I'm happy.
Well, and it might be, it's one of those things as we were talking about earlier, protect
Yeah.
it a little bit until it gets, and like you said, I think each year will get better and better. And as they get a good root system, as they get more established and they get some size, and it's Serenoa is the same way, and people talk about the blue and green form of that. I don't see any difference in hardiness from my experience. I mean, there's blue here, there's green here. They're all very similar. Um, but again, the one thing I learned being a member of the Palm Society is Serenoa, you mulch with sand.
Yes.
Dump you a 5 gallon bucket. I do that every year, and it's like it makes that palm so happy. It jumps right above that sand, and it puts on all that new growth.
Mm.
So every fall, I put a 5 gallon bucket of sand on my Serenoas.
Thomas said that. Thomas said put it up to its neck in sand,
Mm-hmm.
actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is kind of, I mean, it makes sense because of where it grows. It
Yeah,
makes total
yeah.
sense.
And they were growing on our property in Florida, and I used to dig those things up. I wanted one of those so badly as a kid. I'm like 12, 14 years old out, and I'd bring them home and plant them and I would put them in our soil here. And so now when I plant them, I mix a lot of sand. I put them on a little mound and I just keep mounding that sand up, and they're so happy. Now, Margaret Harrison down in Oxford, who has that one down there, I don't think she did anything to it but just stick it in the ground. But I guess it's just the luck of the draw. Some of them are going to do well, but anything I can do to make it better, I'm willing to do. And that has worked for me.
I love Serenoa. That's I have one here where I protected it the first couple of years, and I think even one year protected its spear pulled on its first winter, and it's one of those ones where it readily comes back after a spear pull. They don't seem to have any issues. There definitely are palms that don't like if you spear pull a Sabal, you're probably in a bad place. I know Butias seem to come back pretty readily with no issues. Um, yeah, but like it's gotten hardier every single year, and I don't know why. I protect it still. I gave it lights this year, and I covered it. Maybe I didn't have to, but I told Teddy it's like it took me 10 minutes, and the foliage minus maybe a couple of the leaflets is completely perfect. So if I can take 10 minutes and take care of it, why not? I love them.
Have you noticed on them when they get really cold, they get a diamond shaped pattern? You'll see a darkening of the leaf and it's little diamond patterns. It's really kind of pretty on the Serenoa. Whereas on needle palm, you get lines. You'll get lines of dark
Yeah.
when the leaves
Yeah.
are frozen. Well, the Serenoa will have these diamond shaped
Huh.
patterns on it. So I've always thought that was kind of interesting too. And some palms like Trachycarpus, they fold. The leaves will fold.
Yep.
So a lot of them have a different reaction to cold.
I
But
I I found after a cold weather event, people always celebrate because they're excited that their sables look fantastic, and I'm just like, give it a little bit because the foliage takes some time, and they turn. I found that they turn a very light green, and then they turn into like a very dark brown as the rains come here for us, and then they
yep.
just crisp up. It's that same cycle.
Yeah, and Trachycarpus too. The leaves will stay folded if they've had too much cold. But you get a rain, they'll open up, and you're like, "Yay! I think they're going to be okay." And then they dry out and they fold up again. So, but you learn that over the years. You'll see all these different patterns, and I think Serenoa is like in a fire environment, so it gets burned occasionally. So I think the cold damage on it is kind of in substitute of fire, so it recovers well. And that's why I like it too. But it was one that I was exposed to as a kid that I wanted to grow, and I just have that one has a little special place too because
And
it
they're
was one of the
beautiful.
first palms. Yeah.
They're so beautiful looking, and they clump. I love them.
Yeah, and I've over the years, I got really adventurous when I moved back here from California because I brought back a whole collection of some really cool palms like Oraniopsis, and I had a coal hardy queen palm, and of course I had that planted here. That and I've learned don't do that anymore because they grow really fast and then they die really easily from freeze damage. So I love a queen palm, and I love a big. I mean, nothing's prettier than a pretty queen palm, but nothing's uglier than a nappy one. But um, they always look nappy here after our winter, so I kind of gave up on those.
Yeah.
But I'm always looking for something else new and exciting to grow. These trachycarpus have been popping up. That's kind of fun too. Some of these newer species. I've learned some that sycamensis was not really coal hardy, and Martianus. I've tried all those. I've got a Martianus down there in a pot. I still keep it, um, but you can cross some of these things too. That's what the thing I'm interested in as well. If we can introduce some hardiness from Fortunine to some of these more graceful Trachycarpus species, if they'll cross, um, and see what we can come up with. So,
Yeah, we'll have to get you an Antilensis and a Lohidiana.
well, see how it does for you first. Give us when you get it in the ground, and if it's you have some luck, because it sounds like we are very similar. Do you consider? I've always was Dallas area 8A. Of
Yeah,
course, they can have y'all warm up much faster in the spring,
yeah.
but y'all also get those blue northers. That's the thing I think that's so different. We just don't, it slides east. And moderates a little bit, but we can still get those dips down when y'all are spared. That happened a lot this year. We got a lot
This
of the
year,
pots that came down.
man, this year I was like, this is fantastic. Everything,
Mhm.
uh, not that I want it to happen to anybody, but everything seemed to go that way. And I was like, okay, so, because every year it's been like poor Dallas has just gotten walloped and Texas has just gotten crushed. And I'm just like, all right, now we're going to share a little bit of the misery with everybody else. So you
And
guys enjoy
Alabama,
it.
we're always stuck in the middle. We get it, we
Yeah,
got it this year, but the Carolinas, I think, got it a lot worse. And of
they
course, all
did.
these people in New England and Mid Atlantic took it on the chin.
Yeah.
But
They continue to. I've seen some
yeah,
people as of like last week or the week before, it was still down in the 20s. And it's like almost, it's like early May.
yeah, that's
That seems
crazy.
terrible.
Uh, I'm always watching the weather too, and I always watch weather upstream to see. I'll keep an eye in the winter. I watch Nashville and I watch St. Louis and just kind of check those temperatures up there. And I now can watch Clarksville, see what's going on at Teddy's place, and if sometimes there'll be a big difference in the forecast, and then sometimes it's not so different, and I know if there's a big difference that ours can change at the last minute. I just kind of I've learned over the years to be prepared because they never can get it exactly with that
Yeah.
weather forecast.
That's right. We'll have a lot to talk with Mr. Span coming up this week. Pick his brain.
Man, I can't believe. So as inside baseball for everybody that is listening, Teddy and I were like, what are some guests outside of you and Tom and Joe and Palm people? Teddy and I are like, who are some guests that we can get that are like pretty adjacent to our hobbies? And I know a weather guy here in Dallas, but he's not very fond of coming on. So I told him, I was like, I'm gonna look at Span because I don't know how I got a hold of Span on Facebook. I followed him probably 2.5 years ago, and I like him because he's a extremely talented, and B, he's very good, like our local guy, to call out all the people and the weather porn that like scare you and oh, there's one model run out of 500 and oh my gosh, it's gonna be, yeah, Barney the purple happening on the map, and oh, it's gonna be scary. And I told Teddy, I was like, I'm gonna ask Span. Probably the guy's not gonna answer me because he's probably way too important. But I emailed him and on Facebook too, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I was shocked. I'm like, "That's a phenomenal guest that is gonna have just such a wealth of information in the weather world." And I laugh, Hayes, because you as you joke about how you're gonna check the weather in Clarksville. If you look at my IntelliCast app, I actually have like my last 20 like of the places I've looked at. Teddy's on there, Anniston's on there, and Greensboro in Georgia, Augusta. So like all of you guys, I'm always like, what's the weather over there? And either I'm happy that my weather's better in the wintertime, or I'm in despair because you guys are all better. And I'm just like, why can't they get this crappy cold weather? Send it over there. So I look at like everyone's weather. I don't know why, but it's an adjacency because it's what drives everything for us is the weather ultimately.
Yeah, and I tell you that's James Spann. I mean, he comes and talks to our groups and schools and stuff. He's really good, very civic minded, and getting out in the community uh, and knows what's crazy is he can go when there is a tornado on the map. He can tell you every barbecue place, every street, every what school is there. He knows the state like the back of his hand,
Yeah.
and he really is so good. And and of course we've had our fair share. I know Texas gets a lot of bad weather, of course Tennessee too, but we're just lucky to have someone that talented. And now he has a whole state network, and you can also go in. He's got a whole system of cameras, and I love it now because he has an Anniston camera, and you can go in and see what the temperature is in Anniston. And there's one on Cheehaw, which is the mountain just 15 miles south of Anniston on the highest point, and there's always like a 10-degree difference. So
Hmm.
it's nice to see. I can see what the actual temperatures are now. And downtown, and people don't realize how complicated our geography is here. And I still haven't figured it out. I say I'm not the warmest place in Calhoun County in Anniston. I'm not the coldest. I'm probably in the middle. But we have so much changes in elevation. I can be 18 degrees warmer than the airport some mornings, 18 degrees difference.
Wow.
And then sometimes I'm 2 degrees colder than the airport. And that's why I have 8 thermometers on my property. At one time, I can go and I'll check because I've got 100-foot drop in elevation. But even in town, the ridge just east of me is over 2,000 feet. Uh, the river's 480 feet, so we have a huge range of elevation here, and the way that cold air flows like water downhill, and if there's the slightest wind, it can change. So you've really got to live where you are to know your weather,
Yep.
because it can really, and you get into areas that are flat, you don't have that. But the topography here is uh, so diverse. And with the change of the winds and the cold air drainage patterns, it can be really tough to pinpoint the forecast. As far as a lot of times I'll see, and I just know I can look at the dew point, I can see what the winds are doing, and say, no, we're going to get colder, or it's not going to get that cold. Of course, then you get clouds. I always love a good blanket of clouds at night in the winter.
Yep.
That's always awesome.
For sure.
But James knows all that, and um, he knows where those cold pockets are. You can go to Pinson, Alabama, you can go to Black Creek in Etowah County, and know those are, if you live there, it's cold. And
Well, we'll pick
and
his brain. Don't worry. I already have a lot of questions about the weather. I mean, that's a long episode in and of itself. I learned about the cap here in Dallas. I never even knew what the cap was, but now I understand like what helps to keep the lid on some awful weather in the daytime, and then the cap goes away at night, and then all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. So it's I've learned a lot about just the crazy weather here. That Illinois has tornadoes and stuff, but I mean, not like here. This place is at the drop of a hat, literally all hell can break loose, and it's incredible.
well, and the other thing too, most people don't realize elevation, and I think like Atlanta is 1,100 feet. Um, and I'm on pretty much the same line as Atlanta. I think I'm level with the Atlanta airport. Is Anniston and Atlanta airport are the same latitude. But when you live on a plateau, you get much colder. And I'm down in Anniston's in Ridge and Valley. We're down in the Coosa Valley, and you can go just east of here. You go up on the Piedmont Plateau, and so that plateau, and it goes kind of southwest. And when I was in school at Auburn, you could leave Auburn and the dogwoods would be in full bloom. And you get up in the middle of that plateau south of Anniston, 30, 40 minutes south of Anniston, it's colder. You're up on that plateau. So the dogwood blooms would still be green, the bright green instead of in bloom. And then you come back down off the plateau uh, and they're blooming again in Anniston. So, that always let me know Anniston is there's a warm valley there. So, and of course, we get all the native sable minor and a lot of coastal plain species and stuff. And I think you'll see that too in East Tennessee, that Tennessee River Valley, that little tongue of lower elevation that goes up, from Chattanooga to Knoxville is
Yeah.
a little warmer.
Yeah,
So,
Chattanooga, you might as well as just consider it Georgia, like that's where people have a lot of luck growing trunking palms and, the most moderate weather is either there or Memphis for Tennessee for sure. And then I'm up on the plateau and it's just god awful freezing up here. So
well,
yeah,
and
you're right. That
in
elevation.
Crossville and Cookville, and
Oh,
there's a guy growing palms over there too, in Quebec, Tennessee.
yeah.
Yeah, and you can still grow stuff, but it's cold. Yeah, Charles Cole, that's who it was. I just had to think of his name. But I've always said Chattanooga is the Key West of Tennessee.
For
I think
sure.
if you had to throw up between Memphis and Chattanooga, Memphis gets that there's nothing but barbed wire coming down, and we've seen that that Memphis, and I think you would see a lot of big tall palms in Memphis if it was Zone 8. And it gets knocked back on its heels every so often with those cold
Yeah.
fronts. Yeah. And they get hot too. They're hotter in the summer. They, low elevation, that humidity and stuff. But Chattanooga, I've seen some windmill palms up in Chattanooga. It's that's I think the key spot to grow palms if you're in Tennessee.
Yeah, they're on the other side of the mountains there and there's water too, which makes a big difference. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're up at 2 hours. We
Oh my God.
we've eaten up 2 hours of your time, Hayes. So I know we could obviously be going on for 24 hours. Can we have you on again? I'm sure people
Sure,
are going to
anytime. You
love
see, I
that.
love this, and I guess too, the sun's starting to get. It looks like I've got a glow behind my head,
Of
but
course you do. It's fantastic.
yeah, sure, anytime. I love to talk palms, and especially and getting with guys like y'all that are versed and interested and have the knowledge and the will to learn more and want to do more. And I love sharing, and I'm learning a lot from you guys too. So would love to come back and chat.
Hey, Teddy, I think we should do because on Memorial Day weekend we have Tom and Joe on at the same time, including Hayes on one of these two. Just have a big old Zoom of like a couple of us that are just uh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, we should
Those
do it.
guys they've done so much too for palms, and of course Tom with he's with the citrus, and Joe is just it's. I mean, I've known them for so long, and they're such good friends, such nice guys, and so knowledgeable. And it's like our Palm Society meetings stop being so much about palms and more about friendship, which is really cool. So we get to go to the meetings and get to catch up and see each other. I just hate so much now with my work. I don't get to attend all the meetings like I used to, but yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Hayes,
Get on with them.
we love to consider you a friend of the show. Thanks for coming on.
Well, I'm so glad y'all doing great things, and it's been great. Sure have enjoyed it.
Um,
Really
tell tell
appreciate that.
tell everybody one more time how they can help and support the gardens.
Come to our plant sales. We're online. You can go to Explore AMAG. That's Explore Anniston Museums and Gardens.org. You can follow us on Facebook. Uh, Please, we have a third Thursday plant sale. We have a program this month. I'm doing a program on growing rosemary. We've got a rosemary evaluation at the gardens. Then we'll also get into I've got a coworker that she's a wonderful cook. She's going to cover the culinary side of it. Next third Thursday programs on turmeric, growing curcuma species. We've got a trial. We're trialing several species from Vietnam, and We're growing a lot of different ones of the curcumas. They are wonderful landscape plants. They look great planted in between your palm trees. But just come and support us. Come visit. The museums are fantastic. We have some world-class museums, and we're just fortunate to have them in a community that's as small as Anniston. So, and we're halfway between Birmingham and Atlanta on I-20. Easy to get to.
Oh man, are you really? I guess I didn't even notice. I have family in Georgia, and I live right pretty close to I-20. Our whole drive
Just
there is
down the
I-20.
road.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. So I will say from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure everybody else out there who's listening, thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for being as kind and generous as you are, and your offering of donating 2 hours of your precious time that you could be out in the dirt doing something and spending time with us, Hayes. Thanks for all your time and effort and all your contributions to everything.
Well, thank you. That's certainly kind, and I'll be glad to come back. Let's chat again sometime soon.
Yes. Teddy, any final words?
Yeah, thank you, Hayes, for coming on. Thank you, Tom, as always. And let's not forget, thank you to Nelson Plant Foods for being the sponsor of this episode.
As always, I love my Nelson fertilizer. Thank you, Teddy. Thank you, Hayes. Thank you, everybody, for all your support. And we'll actually see you guys again soon. This is episode 14 of the Palmcast. Thanks, everybody.